Welcome to Deep Thought. Complaining gets you nowhere. Complaining. I'm gonna tell you what the problem with complaining is. It's a mental thing. When people complain about their lives or what's going on or situations that they're in, and it could be anything. It could be on a micro level personal. It could be whatever their group is. Complaining doesn't help you. What does that do? And what I mean by complaining is they'll talk about what's going wrong. Now, if you're talking about what's going wrong, but then follow that up by what you will do to fix that, that's not so much as complaining. That's talking about the problem and then moving on. But then how many people will talk about the problem and stick on the problem or keep complaining? In my decades of life, I've met countless people who've complained about their situation. They might complain about their relationships, their money, where they're living. I'm like, okay. But then if you leave them alone and you see them months later, a year later, years later, they're still talking about the same thing. They haven't risen. It doesn't do anything. The only time you should talk about a particular issue is if you're talking about it to figure out how you're going to solve it. Now, I've said several times, there was a point I was sleeping on an air mattress. I never complained about it, never once. In fact, I laughed about it. Because I said, why complain about it? This is where I'm at in life. I'm going to get to the point where I'm not sleeping on an air mattress. I didn't complain about it. People didn't hear me complain about it. I've talked about it only in passing. But at the time I was sleeping on an air mattress, I didn't mention anything. I didn't say, oh, I'm sleeping on an air mattress, or I'm having this issue, or my car is having this issue. I just said, oh, shoot. No, I ain't complaining anymore. Got a new car when I had to get, well, a newer car. Some of the relationships I was in, I was just saying, oh, I'll just get something better. I'll just do better. I needed to make more money. I was like, oh, okay. That's when I started doing these videos. I wasn't making enough money working a full-time job and my book publishing business. So I said, okay, I need to add to that. I didn't complain. You just do something. I'm gonna tell you what. Because when you complain, it's kind of like you're being stuck in a position. You don't want to be stuck in a position. You want to move forward. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with discussing the problem, but then you need to follow it up with a solution. If you're saying, oh, I don't like where I'm living, okay, fine. But then if you constantly complain, oh, I don't like it, I'm like, okay, what you doing about it? Now, if you say you don't like where you living, but you looking for someplace else, or you figuring out how to live someplace else, okay, that's okay. But if you saying I don't like where I'm living, but then you've been there for 3 years, it was like, what are you doing about it? You have to move forward. Because complaining gets you stuck. I'm gonna tell you what, in life, we always have to move to another level. In life, we should always be evolving. And we all gonna go through some bad stuff. All of us gonna go through some bad stuff, but why complain about it? Shoot, sometimes it's like, oh, like if you're thrown in a hole, right? The proverbial hole, always use that. You can stay at the bottom of that hole, complain, or you can start climbing out. Even if someone threw you in that hole, what you gonna say? Oh, this person threw me out? Well, one, climb out. Two, make it so that person can't throw you in another hole. You have to keep going. And I'm gonna tell you what, the key to it is your mindset. I'm a hammer that home. Deep thought isn't about talking about different metaphysics or things like that. It's about thinking. Thinking. Because it's like an elder told me, I'll never forget it. If it's a man-made problem, you can get out of it. Even if it's an act of nature, you can still think about how you're going to deal with that situation. I don't care what it is. If this house were to be destroyed in, I don't know, a hurricane, even a fire or something like that, it was just like, I would be more annoyed. I would say annoyed by certain things being lost, but it was like, well, I got my life. I'll just rebuild. I will just rebuild from there. And that's how I would do it. Because, in fact, let me share a story. Let me share a story. My freshman year in college, I was actually in a fire. The building I had burned to the ground. I literally got out with just a pair of pajama pants. That's it. A pair of pajama pants. I had to borrow some clothes to get home. And I was wearing all these fly clothes, had these polo socks. I was dressing all fly and everything. And it all burned to the ground. It all burned to the ground. Class ring. Shoot, yearbook that had a bunch of signatures in it. I could have sat there and complained about it, but it was just like, oh, okay. And I came back from that. And shoot, even did better in school. I didn't complain about it. It was like, it happens. It happens. I just did better. I did the things I had to do to do better. Did better in school, everything. And even would get a scholarship. I would get a scholarship in my later years there. Because this was my freshman year, and well, I was chasing the ladies too much then, and that's another story. But I didn't complain about it. You know, I actually went through some stuff. I didn't complain. I didn't say, oh, this thing burned my stuff down. I didn't complain. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I mean, I could have, but I just said, you just got to move on. And that's how you have to be in life. Because when you complain and you're being stuck, you focusing on it. If you get thrown in that hole, you're not going to stay in that hole. You're going to climb out of it. And then, as I said, if somebody threw you in the hole, you're going to make it so they can't throw you in the hole again. And you're going to keep going. And I mean, I've known this with other people too. I mean, I have a very good friend that was homeless at one time. He was homeless. He was sleeping in a car. He's not sleeping in a car anymore. He got a place and 2 cars now. But he didn't complain. He just did his thing. In fact, I didn't even know he was homeless. He didn't one time say to me, oh, I'm sleeping in a car. The whole time. The whole time. He didn't complain about it. He just did the things he had to do to get to another level. All right? I want you to think about that. It gets you nowhere. Don't complain. As long as you can think, you can get out of everything. Everything. And I want you to think on that. And I will get back with you later. Peace and blessings.